everyone, Kelly here, and today I want to talk about the books that I read in the first half of April. There's quite a few because I did an experiment where I tried manga, which was a little quicker to read, and I didn't rate those, so I'm going to do these in order from the one I like the most to the one I like the least. And so even though I didn't rate the manga, I'm just kind of slot them in where I think they would go in terms of my enjoyment level. And the reason I'm starting with the one I like the most is because I had several books that I really didn't like, and I feel like when I start with negative or put them towards anywhere towards the beginning, I just can't like shake off that negativity. So we're just gonna put that all at the end, and if you don't want to be negative, you can just like not listen to the end of this video. So let's start with the ones I really liked. So first off, I have I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, and this is with the assistance of Patricia McCormick. This is the Young Readers Edition. I had started this during middle grade March because there was a prompt of like reading books that are set in Asia, and this, most of this takes place in Pakistan, where Malala is from, but I didn't end up finishing it in March, so I just finished it in time to do this wrap up, and I really enjoyed this. This is her memoir that she has scaled down to being appropriate for like a middle school, young teen audience. And I really like the way she did that. I have not read the adult version, so I don't know what the differences are. But from reading this one, it seemed like, especially at the beginning, she was really just talking about her life. She was talking at first about her life before the Taliban came into her area. And so it was very relatable, I think, for young people and would draw them into the story. She's talking about the TV she liked and the things she talks about with her best friend, like boys and all that kind of like normal stuff in her, how she likes to be the top of her class and really works hard to do that, and her hobbies and the fights she gets in with her little brothers. And it's just very relatable. So I think that's really great. I don't know if that's in the adult version, but I think that's really great to show young readers that she was just like an average kid, just like they are, and did the same kind of things that they like to do. And then once, unrest came to her area, and she was standing up for girls having education when the Taliban was saying, that they would, they were bombing schools, and they were, coming after people that were teaching children or teaching girls after a certain age. And she stood up for that education. I think that this is a really important memoir for kids to read, to show that even at a young age, people can stand up for their beliefs and can make an impact and have passions. And I really enjoyed reading this one, and so much so that I ended up buying the adult version, because sometime I want to read that and kind of compare if there's more details about her life and her mission and all that in the adult version. And then the other book I gave 5 stars was Ain't Burn All the Bright by Jason Reynolds, artwork by Jason Griffin. And this, I've been saying, if you saw my Friday reads where I kind of talked about this as I was reading it. Sorry, my cat is rubbing up against the tripod. Can you stop that? You can rub against me, but not that. And this is more like an art piece than just a book. So there'll be like a lot of artwork on every page and just a little bit of text. And this is really just them, mostly I think, working through what was happening in 2020. The theme of this is kind of like not being able to breathe, and what are the different things that cause that. There's COVID, and it goes through like the police brutality and things that were happening in 2020, and also anxiety and all the things that cause us to have disturbance in our breathing and struggle, and a lot of stuff that went through in 2020. And this is a very timely book, so I would recommend picking it up soon, just because we could still really like feel a lot of these issues. And I felt like this is one where you have to almost read it a few times. I ended up reading it 3 times before I felt like a lot of it really sank in, and every time I read it, something new hit me in this. And the way I did it was, the audiobook has 2 versions in it because it's only a 13-minute audiobook. That's how little text is in there. But it is also like, even with having the audiobook just on 1x speed, it felt too fast of like turning the pages with the audiobook and still getting the pictures. So I first listened to the audiobook. There's 2 versions, first with just narrated by Jason Reynolds, and I love his voice, so I listened to it first, looking through the pictures, and then I took time just to sit down and go slowly through reading it while studying each picture. And the 3rd time I did the full cast audiobook, which is also, I think, 15 minutes, something like that. And then there's an afterword where the authors discuss why they thought this was something that they wanted to write and why it called to them at that time in their lives. And you can tell how much it pulled from current events at that time. So I would highly suggest this one. It's really a quick read, but I would recommend reading it more than once. Even if you don't get the audiobook, even reading it through twice, I just felt like once I knew what it was about the first time, the second time I was really able to just sit in the emotions of the art and the words. And then I have a few manga that I really enjoyed. If you want to see full details of me reading these, I did do a video where I was trying manga for the first time. I'll link that down below. And this is a really fun experiment because I ended up really enjoying a lot of what I read. So first I have Fullmetal Alchemist, and this one I think was my favorite out of all the ones that I read. And this follows two brothers that they are alchemists, and it's kind of the events happen before the beginning of the first volume where they perform this alchemical process and end up losing parts of their body. And so that's why you see he has a metal arm. And so they're trying to restore their bodies by looking for the Philosopher's Stone. So they're on this quest. And I think that's going to be like the overall arch in just this first volume. We're kind of setting up the characters, learning what happened in their past, and seeing them kind of going on this quest, and there's like little things that they have to fight along the way in order to try to find this item. And I really enjoyed this. I really liked how in this first volume I could get to know their personalities. I really loved both the brothers, especially Al. He just I just loved him, and their personalities shone through. I also really liked the action and kind of the things that they were encountering along the way. So I would highly recommend this if you are new to manga as well. I know this is like a popular one, so if you already read manga, you probably already know about this, but if you're new like me, I thought this was really fun. And then the next manga I really enjoyed was The Promised Neverland, and this one is about a group of orphans that live at this orphanage. And, they are, at the beginning, we're just like following them through their life, seeing what they do day to day, and them taking care of each other. They also have someone they call mom, who is the head of the orphanage and is taking care of them. But then it takes a turn, and I'm not going to tell you what happens, but maybe something dark is going on that they didn't previously know about. And so we're finding out about that. And the next one was Spy Family, and this one is about a man who is a spy, and he's known for lots of disguises, and he gets this mission where he has to infiltrate a private school. In order to do that, he has to have a kid. So he also needs to have a wife, like a whole family, a fake family, in order to do this mission. And so that's what's happening in this volume. He's kind of gathering his fake family, and this was just so fun. There were so many elements to this. It's heartwarming and has some really touching moments. It also has some funny moments, and there's some action too. So it's everything mixed into one. So I'm really excited to continue all three of those. And then moving on to a 4-star book that I read is Shah and the Tree of Wishes by Roshani Chokshi. And this is book 3 in the Shah series. And I am reading these with my daughter. We're listening to them on audiobook. Sorry, I can't seem to talk today. We're listening to these on audiobook while we're driving from different places, because since we live in the country, it takes us a while to get anywhere. And so we get to put this in and listen to it along the way. And she is absolutely loving it, and I'm enjoying it with her. I like discussing it. She talks about it all the time at dinner, and when dad comes down, wants to say what's going on with Aru and all of the other characters. I really enjoy the character work in this, because a lot of times these adventure quest kind of stories in middle grade, you don't always dive in deep with the characters, but I feel in this one we really get to know them. It's kind of similar to Percy Jackson in the level of how well we get to know these main characters. I love the world that's created in this. This is all based on Hindu mythology, and I love the way she weaves all that mythology into their quest and the people they meet, and I just really enjoy this series. Like I said, this is the 3rd one. We've already moved on to the 4th, and I have the 5th one out from the library, so we're just kind of moving right through this series, and I'm really enjoying this. I haven't for a long time kind of binge read a series and gone through it so quickly, and the problem with that is that I can't distinguish the plots between the different books. So I wouldn't tell you what this is about specifically anyways, because I wouldn't want to spoil it, but I can't tell what happens in this one versus the 2nd or the 4th, but I am still just really enjoying each one of these. And then onto books I didn't really like. So kind of in the middle area is Toilet Bound Hanako-Kun. And this was another manga that I just didn't really enjoy it very much. I didn't love the artwork. And I just thought it wasn't really my style of humor or the kind of plot that I found interesting. It was a bit of a repetitive plot, which I know a lot of other ones, I'm sure Fullmetal Alchemist is a repetitive plot because of the like whole kind of, like having a quest or like thing they have to solve and moving past. I get that that's repetitive too, but I'm enjoying the characters. This one, not so much. The humor and the characters weren't really something I connected with. So I'm not going to continue this series, but this one is about this school that has a, spirit in it that grants wishes. And so this girl goes, and it lives in the bathroom, goes to the bathroom to find this spirit to answer a wish. She's expecting it to be a girl spirit since it's the girl's bathroom, but it's this boy spirit. And, after she requests her wish, there are consequences to getting a wish done. And so that's what this is following. And like I said, it just wasn't for me, but nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't like my style. And then the other one I didn't really like was One Piece Volume 1. And this one also just wasn't my style in terms of the artwork. And also it's all about pirates, which are not really something I enjoy. And I don't really like, adventures on the ocean. So that's kind of why this one didn't work for me. And this follows a boy named Luffy who just really wants to be a pirate. That is his goal in life, to be the king of pirates and to go on in search of this treasure called One Piece. And that just didn't really interest me at all. So those are two manga that I'm not going to continue. And then onto the novels that I really did not like. The first two were new releases that I had put them on my anticipated release video, but for both of these, I said that these were like last chance for these authors. So I wasn't anticipating in terms of like super excited for them. It was more like, okay, I'm going to read one more thing from these authors, and if this doesn't work, I'm done with them. And obviously I gave both of these 2 stars. I am done with these authors now. So one was The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund-Broka. And this is an adult romance about these 2 writers that they had like written a couple books together, and their second book became super famous. Like one of those like literary fiction books that everybody has read, was all over the place. And after that, they stopped writing together, and there's rumors of what happened, but nobody really knows why this author duo broke up in terms of writing. And then at the beginning of this, they are getting together to write one more because they're still under contract for one more book. And so even though they kind of hate each other because of whatever happened in the past, which we don't know about at the beginning, they are stuck writing one more book together. And it's just kind of like the process of writing that. And then also it's a romance. So them like, us figuring out what happened in the past and them having a relationship. Great concept, sound like a great concept, especially since the writers of this are a married couple that write together. So I thought, hey, they know what it's like to write together as a duo and as a couple. So that'll be a great, book. I just really hated the romance in this. I thought the actual, if you were breaking down the scenes, the actual, romantic tension scenes were not bad. Especially in the first half of this book, I was liking the tension that was there and, the hate to love, where you could tell something happened in the past and there's some trust issue problems and that they're working through that. And then also, the sexual tension that was involved when they started to have feelings again. If you broke down just those individual scenes, I thought it was good. But then the problem was every time there was one of those scenes, I got I was in it for a moment, but then I would remember that these people are cheaters because both in the past timeline and the current timeline, one of them is in a committed relationship, like a marriage or an engagement, and yet they're having these feelings and they're not necessarily acting on them while they're in the relationship, but they are to the point where it's definitely emotional cheating, expressing their feelings or showing them in their actions. And even if nothing physical happens, I still count that as cheating because there's no way that I would want my husband doing that with somebody else, having those kind of intense moments together and having those intense feelings. It is definitely cheating. And so that was in the back of my mind the whole time I'm experiencing their relationship. Every time I thought, oh, I'm getting to the point where I'm liking them together and I'm enjoying their couple dynamic, and then I'm wait a minute, you have not broken up with that other person. Get your stuff together and go and break off your relationship. Like, that was like what was in the back of my mind the whole time. And then even regardless of that, I felt like as the book went on, the relationship between them started to sour because of like, it got to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, just sit down and have a conversation about your feelings. Like, there was a point where I'm like, okay, this should have been like where the happily ever after started, but it's like, let's add more drama of you guys just not wanting to talk to each other. And I'm like, I just was done. So I'm done with this author duo. I hadn't liked their last couple young adult books. I wanted to give their adult book a try. Did not like this at all. 2 stars. I mean, I gave it 2 stars because there was some good like romantic tension, like I said, even though it was spoiled with the tropes that I don't like. But some people don't mind that kind of trope. For me, any type of cheating in a book, just in a romance book. I mean, if it was like in a literary fiction where it's like about life and marriage and all that, maybe I can handle it. But in a romance book, I don't want there to be cheating. So yeah, I didn't like it. And then the other one I really didn't like was 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. Peter Swanson was, like the other one, was one that I've liked some of his books. I've disliked some of his books, and I wanted to give him one more chance because I feel like the last few, or there's also like a few that I didn't read that I just had no like interest in the like topic. So I was like, I'm thinking that he's not an author for me just because I really loved one of his books. And this one I really didn't like. So this is about a group of people that are sent a list. So there's a list with 9 names on it. That list is sent to the 9 people that are on the list, and then people start dying from the list. So it's like kind of like, oh, if you're on the list, somebody's out for you. And there's also an FBI agent that's like trying to figure out who's behind the list and who's behind these deaths. And so like, you know, kind of like an interesting concept. But okay, so here's the problem I have with Peter Swanson. I've only read 3 of his books, but all 3 of his books have basically been a copy of a like classic detective or mystery novel. So like the first one I read was The Kind Worth Killing, and that was basically a retelling of Strangers on a Train. And it did go a different direction, so I didn't mind that it was a retelling because, you know, that's an older mystery novel, but it doesn't really spoil the classic because it does go in quite a different direction. So I was fine with it for that. But then the second book I read was, what is it called? 8 Perfect Murders, is that what it is? And that one actually spoils 9 different books because there's a 9th book that's not part of the 8 Perfect Murders in there. It spoils a whole bunch of like classic mystery novels because that's what the deaths are based off of. And then this one is basically an exact retelling of a classic mystery book, which I'm not even going to tell you what the book is because it would spoil this one. But like, it is obvious. If you've read that book, as you're going, you're like, this is kind of going in a certain direction. And I'm like, you basically took that book and rewrote it. I mean, obviously you changed the names and you changed a little bit of why the killer's doing it, but it is basically exactly that book. And I'm like, how do people get away with publishing a book that is almost an exact copy of an old book? I don't get that. I do not get how a book like this is even published. And I really didn't like it. And also, not even like that, because I get, like, I read retellings, but usually retellings have some kind of different path. That's why I'm saying that his first book I read, it went a different direction. It didn't go so close. This is, like, way too close to the original for me to actually be a retelling. Like, I mean, like, as in, like, a reimagining or anything. It, like, just feels like we're just telling that story over again in a modern time. And, yeah, so I kind of hated this book. I mean, like, now that I'm talking about, maybe I should have just given it 1 star. But the only reason I didn't is because I kept reading. I didn't, like, give up on it. But most of that was because I wanted to find out if he was actually going to copy the entire book. Yeah, so I hated this book, and I'm done with Peter Swanson. You see why I can't, like, talk about these bad books or books I don't like at the beginning, because then I get riled up. So last one is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Juliet Quinn. This is the 4th book in the Bridgerton series. I picked this up because my husband and I had been watching Bridgerton, and we watched the first 2 seasons, and I was like, I just want to give one of the books a try just to see if I will like it. Historical romance is very hit or miss for me because I certain tropes, and if there's any kind of like alpha male or like non-consensual scenes, sex scenes, and it's a real turn-off for me, so I kind of have to be really picky about the historical romance I read. But I was like, I just want to give it a try since it is like such a popular series right now with the show. But I didn't want to read the first two because, you know, I've watched the show and I was like, okay, I'm ready to like move on to something else. And plus I had heard like from some people that have read it that kind of the first few books have more like alpha male main characters, and there are some like maybe questionable consent things. And so I was like, okay, this one seems to be the one that a lot of people like. They really love the romance. They say it's cute and all that. So I'm going to pick this one up. And for the first like third, I was like, oh yeah, because it's like a friends to lovers. And, you know, the friend one friend has, you know, loved the other friend, but the other, you know, the other one finally like realizing that that's the person for them. Seems like a trope that I like, but the main character, the Bridgerton character in this one, he is mean to her the entire time, like angry, like not just like witty banter kind of mean, but like he's like seriously has some anger issues in this book. And I really didn't expect that based off of the character in the show. I was not expecting it to be like the entire time this guy just being angry, and angry to the point that he like physically abuses her at one point, which some people have say it's not, but like grabbing someone's arm and holding it until it hurts and like dragging them around, that's physical abuse in my opinion. And that's in here, and it's supposed to be like we're supposed to be rooting for this couple and rooting for him to be in love with her, and I'm like, no. And especially like that scene of like the grabbing of the arm is followed right afterwards with a like a really romantic scene, and I'm like, no, don't give me a like romancy scene right after he physically hurt her and like asserted his dominance. Like, no, that does not work for me. And so I was gonna give up right then, but I was like, okay, I'm so far in. At that point I was far in enough that I was like, okay, I'm just gonna finish this off, see if their relationship gets any better after like they are actually together. And I'm like, no, he's still angry and he's still like mean to her, like makes her feel ashamed of herself and like all this stuff. And I'm like, no, I do not enjoy this hero at all. And so I'm not going to read any more Bridgerton books because I'm enjoying the show for the fact that it's kind of just over the top and fun. I'm not like necessarily loving all of the like romance and everything that's happening, but I think it's just kind of you know, lush and big and over the top. So I'm going to stick to watching the show and not read any more of those books. And yeah, so that is the stuff that I have finished in the first half of the month. Sorry to end on a negative note, and sorry if you really love those books. I'm not telling you, even when I said I didn't think this should be published, if you like this book and you are enjoying it, great. Because I think with thrillers, a lot of it's just like, you know, what you enjoy. And if you like it, I am not criticizing you. You know, you do you, enjoy the books that you love. That's just me being spicy in my feelings about it and just being done with certain authors. They're just not for me. They could be for other people, but they're not for me. And that's it for me. Let me know if you've read any of these books and want to talk about them down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.